So today we're going to talk about some of the biggest mistakes that we see in the multifamily business. Not all of them, but some of them. My name is Khleif, if you don't know who I am. I'm host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast, which I'm blessed to say is the largest commercial real estate podcast in the world now. And my total focus is multifamily. I'm also author of the book, How to Create Lifetime Cash Flow Through Multifamily Properties, which is a #1 bestseller as well. Today we're going to talk about mistakes that I see regularly. Not with my students, because they know better, but I see these out publicly. So let's get into it. So one of the first ones is getting into this business thinking it is a get-rich-quick scheme, and it's not. Now, I will you're not going to get rich quick. This is a become very freaking wealthy over time business, but it's not a get-rich-quick thing. If somebody tells you you can get rich quick doing this, run the other direction, okay? Now, I will say the only caveat to that is I do have students that are wholesaling multifamily very successfully. Like I did a post about almost two years ago actually and said, how many of you guys, my students, my warriors, have made over $100,000 wholesaling a multifamily? And a dozen had at that time, and 2 made over $1 million. So you can, in a wholesale, you can make some pretty quick money. But in general, this is become very wealthy over time business. Okay, the next thing is just dabbling, okay? Dabblers get their butts kicked. They get crushed. You can't dabble in multifamily. You need to educate yourself. Come to one of my boot camps or learn somewhere else, but you've got to become competent, okay? It starts with competence. Then that'll equate to confidence, competence to confidence. Then that'll equate to your ability to influence people and raise money and buy deals and partner up and everything else. Starts with competence, though. Don't dabble. Next thing is buying in a market you really don't know well, okay? When you get into this business, you should pick 1 or maybe 2 maximum markets that you become really an expert in. You know what the rents should be. You know who all the big players are. You've evaluated it. You know where the best parts of town to buy in. You know what businesses are there, what businesses are coming in, what businesses are going out. You know, with my warriors, my coaching students, we have them do a market presentation on a city before they even have a deal, which forces them to really study the city and learn everything they can, because when you're raising money for a multifamily deal, you're going to have to convince an investor that you know what you're talking about and that market is worth investing in, right? So you got to know the market. That's the next thing. All right. Thinking you can do this business alone. Multifamily is a team sport. You can wholesale and flip to your heart's content in the single family world, but you're not going to do it in multifamily. You're not going to build a big net worth and big cash flow in multifamily on your own. It's a team sport. And don't be put off by that. There's big strength in numbers, and there's a lot of different hats you can wear in the commercial multifamily world. So, you can be the person that finds the deals, builds the broker relationships. You can be the person that builds relationships with potential investors. Maybe you're analytical and you love spreadsheets. You could be the underwriter. Maybe you've got project management or construction experience or even management experience in general. You can do the asset management after you close on the deal. So there's just a lot of places you can join in with a team. My students, my warriors, now own over 100,000 units that we know of, and almost all of those were done between warriors with people that play to their strengths. So you play to your strengths and you hire, align, or partner for your weaknesses. That's the secret to success here. Giving up or being too impatient, and thinking it's going to happen immediately. I see this with my students all the time. They're moaning because it's been 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, they haven't gotten a deal yet. Then they get one, and then the next thing I know, they have 3 or 4. It's how it always happens. The first deal is the hardest. Takes the longest. It's the scariest. It's the most stressful. And then once you're done, it's like that all there is. So don't give up. There's this great graphic of this. There's a book called 3 Feet from the Gold, about a miner that gave up 3 feet from the gold. This is a good indication of it. And it's a true story, actually. And the guy screwed up and gave up, and he was 3 feet from a giant gold mine. So don't give up too early, okay? Stick with it. Getting into analysis paralysis, and you know who you are, okay? A lot of analytical people get into this business, and they have to check off every single box before they make a move. Is that you? Well, if it is, listen up, okay? You've got to make that move. You've got to take that first step. Dr. Martin Luther King said, you take that first step in faith, the next step will be revealed. Lao Tzu said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but you've got to take that first step. Here's the analogy. If you're analytical and you suffer from analysis paralysis sometimes, here's the analogy I want you to remember. You can drive all the way across the United States at night with your headlights only seeing 50 feet in front of you, and you'll make it. Now, you may have some obstacles on the way, you may have some challenges, but you'll make it because other people have done it. It's the same way with this business, okay? But you've got to take that first step and take action. All right. using the seller's numbers and expecting them to be true. When you're buying an asset, the seller is going to provide numbers, or the broker will get them from the seller and give them to you. Okay, and they'll give you a T12. They'll give you very often they'll give you a pro forma as well, which is what they think the property will do. It's toilet paper, okay? You have to do your own numbers. If you come to one of my boot camps, I teach you how to normalize the expenses and factor in your own expenses and income so you can look at it accurately, but you have to do that. It's an important piece of this. And this is a mistake people make. Another mistake is not adjusting the amount of property taxes. This is a newbie mistake. Are taxes going to go up if you buy the property? You better believe it, so you better know how to calculate it. And again, it's another thing we teach at my boot camps, but regardless, you've got to learn how to do that so that the tax line item on your profit and loss statement is probably one of the biggest line items, if not the biggest, that you're going to have on your P&L, your profit and loss statement. So you got to make sure it's accurate, because if it's not, you have a real problem, right? And it's going to be different in different geographies, okay? Some markets, they don't assess, but every third, fourth, fifth year. We just bought an asset in Nashville, and the taxes aren't going up for 3 years. For some markets, they do it instantly. So you need to know what it is in your geographic market. You got to do a little research and just figure it out. Okay, not properly estimating negative cash or extensive repairs. Negative cash flow or extensive repairs. Now, this is two things. I probably should have separated this into 2 slides. Listen, we are heading into a contraction. And, when we buy a deal like that Nashville asset we just bought, we have 6 months of expenses in reserve just in case, what hits the fan fund, okay? And so you need to have extra money in the bank in case you have a negative cash flow issue, right? Or, if you have underestimated what the repairs will be. And so, you've got to raise enough money for this. You cannot assume you're going to be able to handle it from cash flow. That's an absolute recipe for disaster. You need to raise the money in advance so you have it. You don't say, okay, we'll pay for that stuff from cash flow. That doesn't work. Very important. Okay, buying a property without looking at the economic vacancy. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, when you buy a property and you buy 100 units and 95 of them are occupied, okay, you're 95% physically occupied. But what if only 70 of them are paying? Okay, that's economic occupancy, and you want to make sure you want to know who's paying, not just who's living there, right? It's an important distinction, and that's called economic occupancy or economic vacancy. So basically, you calculate it by taking the gross scheduled rent, the total rent possible, minus the actual rent collected. That's your economic vacancy, okay? And you can reverse that and call it economic occupancy, but that's it. Don't miss this. Super, super important. That's another newbie mistake. Okay, another one is buying a property based on future appreciation versus cash flow. My book, I wish I had a copy here. I don't have a copy here. It's called How to Create Lifetime Cash Flow in Multifamily Properties, but the subtitle is The New Rules of Real Estate Investing, i.e. the new rules are forget value. It's all about cash flow. Don't tell me you can buy this property for $1 million that sold for $3 million 2 years ago. I don't care. What's the cash flow? Cash flow is everything, especially in this economic downturn that we're heading into. We're already there. And so cash flow is everything. Focus on cash flow. Number one thing. Misjudging market rents. This is a big one. See, if you don't accurately project rents, it can flip both ways. You can miss out on a phenomenal deal, or you could screw up on a deal and get in trouble if you buy it. I'll give you an example on missing out on a phenomenal deal. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're buying a property where the owner pays all the utilities, and you compare it to one where the tenants pay their own utilities. That can be $150 per month per unit difference in rent, okay, which is huge. Okay, so that can massively impact the value. I'll give you an example of the impact. We have a 296 unit asset in San Antonio, and we numbered the parking spaces. So we told them, hey, you can pick your own parking space. You'll have a reserve sign, closest one to your unit. We had 100 people take us up on that and pay $25 a month. That was an $800,000 instant increase in value. Did you hear that? $25 times 100 units. That's why this is such a big deal. I have a friend who had a friend that screwed this up and could have made $1 million wholesaling a multifamily property because he screwed this up. So you got to make sure you got the right rents, okay? Big deal. Not asking for seller financing. If you come to my boot camp, I teach you how to mail owners that have owned for 20 plus years, which are retirees. And if you're not asking for seller financing, you're doing them a disservice. Because here's the thing. If they're retired, all their tax benefits are gone. They're going to pay. They're going to give Uncle Sam probably at least 70 cents on the dollar. Okay, is all they're going to get. They're going to give Uncle Sam 30 cents on the dollar, and they're not going to take that money from that sale of that asset and put it into another high-risk investment. They're risk averse at that point if they're retirees, right? So they're going to throw it in the bank, and what's the bank paying? Maybe 1% interest. So you want to have a conversation something like this, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I'm buying your property for $1 million. And you're only going to keep maybe $700,000, and I know you're going to put it in the bank, and the bank's paying 1% interest. Here's what your payment will be. Now, if you work with me, I'm going to give you enough of a down payment so you know I'm serious, but I'm going to pay you 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% interest. Doesn't matter, whatever the numbers work out to. Your payment from me is going to be 3 times what you're going to get from the bank, and it usually is, and because you're only paying taxes on the amount you get from me every year. You have that conversation. If you don't have that conversation with a seller that's retired, you're doing them a disservice, honestly, because it's better for them as well. And there's nothing better than seller financing. There's no credit report involved. You can buy an asset that needs a ton of work. Now, we'll mention one other thing while I'm on a roll here. Seller bonding is also huge, especially if you're dealing with retirees. Focus on the relationship before you focus on the deal. I have done deals nothing down because I bonded with the seller and they just wanted the payments. I've done deals where I haven't made a payment for a year because the property needed so much work, and I bonded with them. I said, hey, I got to put the money into the property. It was the truth, and I didn't make a payment for a year. Bond with the sellers as well. So seller financing. Buying a property in your own name. Do not buy a property in your own name. You always buy in an LLC, a limited liability corporation. You need asset protection, okay? When you're a landlord, you're walking around with a bullseye on your forehead, okay? You need asset protection. You do that through an LLC. Always, always, always. Choosing bad contractors. You've got to do your homework with contractors, and you're not going to find good contractors on Google. I used to say the yellow pages. Now you know how old I am. But you're not going to find them on Google. You find them through referrals. Okay, so you ask people. If you don't know anybody to ask, go to a local meetup in your area. Go to a real estate investor club meeting and ask there. Who are some good contractors that you know? You'll find some good ones, and you do it through referrals. Very, very important. So those are just some of the mistakes we see in this business. I'm going to tell you we've seen them all, and I've made most of them myself. In fact, it's funny, at my boot camps, I sell T-shirts now that say hashtag. I don't sell them; I give them away. Actually, they say hashtag Ask Me How I Know, because I'll tell participants there. We had 800 people in Denver a while back, and I tell participants, don't do that. Ask me how I know. And then a student got me that shirt. And now we have them printed and we give them away. But anyway, I've made all the mistakes. I don't want you to make those mistakes. So if you're interested in this business, for God's sakes, come to one of my boot camps or listen to my podcast. But get yourself educated. Don't dabble. I'll see you later.